Everybody out there ready?
Hi, I'm Johnny Smith, host of the Inquisitive Minds podcast. Join me while we interview all manner of interesting people from all walks of life. Some conspiracy, some cryptozoology, and just some things that are just plain interesting. Every week I'll have someone with me who is an expert in their specific field.
This is the Inquisitive Minds podcast.
Hey, welcome and thank you for tuning in to the Inquisitive Minds podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Smith, and with me today, my guest, she graduated from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. She now practices at a private firm, and she's also a stand-up comedian who performed at the Bayham Theater opening up for Frankie French. She was the co-host of mine at Thursday Night Jest, and more importantly, she's a friend. Brittany, Alexis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
How are you doing? How are you doing today?
Doing great.
And you know what? Not just today, but in today's climate.
Doing all right. Honestly, when I was looking up more information about the topic, I realized why I like the topic so much. It really correlates really well with a lot of things that are going on.
I agree. I think this is, an important discussion to have at these times because we can take a look from a more rational standpoint.
Yeah. Sorry.
Technical difficulties?
Technical difficulty. Let me check it and fix it where it doesn't happen anymore. Okay.
Okay.
We're all good. Technical difficulties done.
All right.
I think.
You want to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like Johnny said, I'm a stand-up comedian on the side, but I'm a lawyer in my day job. And the reason why I went into law is I wanted to help people, and so that's what I really hope to do. Comedy is a really good stress reliever for that. It's a lot of fun.
What type of law do you practice?
Right now I'm doing criminal defense work, but the firm does like criminal defense work now, and then property, real estate, like all kinds of stuff, wills and estates. The partner is a licensed real estate agent, so I mean, you got it all.
Oh, okay. Have you had to defend any people arrested during protesting?
Well, kind of. So I was with a group of attorneys who were representing protesters who got arrested pro bono. But actually, one of the clients I had, the charges were withdrawn. I'm not sure if you saw that development, but the DA's office declined to prosecute in about 39 cases.
Oh, I didn't see that, no.
So that's going pretty well. It's going pretty well. If there are more, then I know we'll be happy to help out. But
So how long have you been practicing?
I have been practicing for about 2 years. I graduated in 2017, but I didn't take the bar exam until February of 2018. It's only offered in February and July. And so I took the February one. And I started at the district attorney's office just downtown. And I recently, like within the last 2 months, started in this new private firm. Okay.
And you said you do stand-up comedy. How long have you been doing that for?
Let's see, since 2017, right after I graduated law school, so almost 3 years. I took about a year off to study for the bar exam and then start working. I didn't really have as much time when I first started, and I didn't know anything, so it took even longer. But yeah, it's going well now.
More importantly, what made you start stand-up? I always think that's an interesting answer.
So the reason why I started, I knew I wanted to be a trial attorney, and I would get kind of nervous talking in smaller groups. Like large groups I'm fine with, and one-on-one I'm okay with. But when it comes to 12 people might be on a jury, I get a little bit nervous, a little gun shy, especially I didn't want to, start practicing when I had cases. And this attorney, he told me, take all the speaking engagements you can, and that'll help you with your presence and in the courtroom. And so I went to a stand-up open mic by accident. And
Which one?
It was Ham Bones, obviously.
Okay.
For one. And so I went to Ham Bones, and I saw it, met the host, who was Joey Marchi, and I was like, I'm going to come back next week. And I just started doing it after that. And it's really helped me a lot because a year after I had my first stand-up show, I had my very first jury trial, and it went well, but
congratulations.
So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Anything else you'd like the people to know?
Oh boy, I don't know. I was homeschooled for a long time, so that's probably why I'm so nerdy. I don't know.
That kind of explains a lot, actually.
It does. I know.
That just put a lot of pieces to the puzzle together.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So we're going to be talking about the Stanford prison experiment today. And you studied this already? I believe one of your undergrads was in sociology?
It was. And even though it's like a social psychology experiment, it does have a lot of things that are relevant to sociology. So I also did a lot of independent research because I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever read.
To be fair, I tripped up on social psychology about 6 or 7 times before we started.
Yeah. No,
just so everybody has a real brief understanding of what we're talking about, the Stanford prison experiment was a social psychology experiment that attempted to investigate the psychological effects of perceived power, focusing on the struggle between prisoners and prison guards.
Yes.
Now, when did you first come across this?
Oh boy, I want to
Or
say.
actually, I'm sorry. That's a better question is, when was this study done?
Oh, the study was done in 1971 by Dr. Zimbardo and a team of researchers, and it was conducted at the Stanford School of Psychology. So that's a little bit of the historical underpinning. Do you want me to get into it?
Yeah, let's get right into it.
It's interesting, right? Okay, so essentially what happened is he wanted to study, the psychology of perceived power, how people respond. And so what he decided to do, he took a lot of input from what he had seen in actual prisons. And so what he did is he simulated the experience.
I'm sorry, what was he a doctor of?
I think he was a doctor in psychology. I think that's what he got his PhD in.
Okay, and what did he spend the time in prisons for? What?
Oh, no, I think when I say that, he didn't spend time in prisons.
No, he spent time studying prisoners, correct?
That is true. I'm not sure why exactly he started. I don't know if he was studying prisons just because of, like, for a specific. Oh, yes, I do. I'm sorry. Here we go. I set up straight. Right. He was studying it. It was actually because the Department of Defense wanted to study perceived power, and they actually wanted to do it for like the U.S. Marines and the Navy. So the reason why this study was done was actually for the military. Like they wanted to have the psychology.
You mean the government played a role in something bad?
Well, the thing is, the study isn't bad. Like, I don't know.
Okay, I'll give you that. The effects, it just represents how bad people can turn. So I look at it as a negative study.
Well, the other thing too about that is like, it's a good thing that they were looking into it, in my opinion, because that means that they want to see how to prevent it. And like that really kind of seemed like the goal.
Spoiler alert, I'm gonna say they failed.
Yeah, didn't go well.
But I'm sorry for interrupting you. Go ahead.
So you're fine. Well, I mean, like in a nutshell, the project was supposed to last just 2 weeks, and it lasted 6 days. So it did not go well.
How early did it go south?
Oh, it went south immediately. So essentially, they got 70 people who replied to this ad they put out in the paper for a prison experiment, which a lot of people consider to be the place they went wrong in the beginning. Saying that it was a prison experiment probably brought in the wrong crowd, like people.
Yeah, ruffians, tough guys. Yeah. I would apply for that. It's like, I've been to prison. I'll do a prison experiment.
Exactly, and like macho men, like, and some people think that maybe putting it out there like that was a mistake, and maybe it skewed the results.
Was it a paid gig?
Was it? Oh yeah, $15 a day.
See, that's good road work.
Oh yeah, it was. Well, the thing is, in the 70s, apparently that was a lot, and you're also talking about like 18-year-olds. So like they're college students from like the Stanford area. So like they're all in school.
Well, if you're calling them tough guys, there are probably some that aren't in school that are laborers, used to rough work. So that's an easy day's work for them.
Exactly, especially when you're talking about every single day for 2 weeks and you just have to exist in a location.
Oh yeah, that's all you got to do.
Yeah,
it sounds amazing. I'd sign up for it.
Yeah,
I'd sign up for it today for 15.
For 15, I would too.
Yeah, just for 15 straight.
But it's funny though, because like technically, if you really think about it, some of them actually did do work and they didn't like expect more pay, if that makes sense. But I'll get into that because like,
Okay.
so you have huh?
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying like you have these 70 people who hear about this experiment, this prison experiment, and decide to go apply for it. So what they do is they have them go through a psychological examination, a physical examination,
Now,
as
what was the psychological examination for?
it was
Like to
like
determine if they were stable?
yeah, it was checking if they were stable. It's like personality tests. Kind of, they were one thing. It seems like they were looking for, even though I didn't see it explicitly stated. They were looking to see if people had like these ideals and these personalities that would kind of make it where they look for power and they seek to be corrupted.
Almost kind of like a nature nurture thing,
Yeah,
like who they are inside.
like psychopath and sociopath, like that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Like that's what they were like looking for. They wanted to make sure that people were mentally sound and they were like physically fit, so that these like there would be a reduction in potential liabilities and incidents. And also, I guess that operated as their control group.
Now, was it only males?
It was only males, and only 24 got selected.
Okay, and do you know the age ranges?
Age range is college age. They were all. It seems like
All of them college age, no
yeah,
middle-aged men, nothing like that?
it doesn't seem like there were any middle-aged men. It doesn't seem like there was. It was just mostly young college guys. One of the most prolific ones, he was 18. They called him John Wayne, and I'll tell you why they called him John Wayne. It wasn't a term of endearment, but he was only 18 when he started, and I was actually really surprised that he was so young. But
My throat hurts, so I'm not confident enough to do a John Wayne impression.
I'm not good at John Wayne impressions at all.
All I could say is Pilgrim, and I don't even know if that's wrong to say anymore.
I don't know.
I don't want to offend nobody. To the Pilgrims out there, I'm sorry.
To the Pilgrims. See,
They'll come at me with buckles. I gotta stop.
Wait, what?
They'll come at me with buckles.
Oh my god! I saw.
They'll take them off their hats and throw them.
Like Coach is selling these shoes that are 100% Pilgrim shoes.
Pilgrim shoes. We got off track as we usually do here. So the experiment starts. They got 24 individuals. How many police officers? How many guards? How many prisoners?
So this is how they do it. They do a flip of the coin to decide who's going to be a guard and who's going to be a prisoner. There's 9 on each side, but they have some alternates. It seems like they had like 2 or 3 alternates on the side. So only 3 prison guards would be on duty at one time, and all 9 prisoners are obviously going to be there the whole time.
So it was 24-hour shifts.
24 hours. No.
Or 8-hour shifts, but 24-hour watch.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So they like pretty much souped out the basement of the Stanford psychology building. They like put up bars on the doors. Like there was 3 to a cot. No, there was 3 to a room, and there were 3 cots in each room. There was 1 bathroom. They like separated other places. They made a closet, kind of your solitary confinement room, and it was big enough. It was like 2 feet by 2 feet. So like you could stand up in it, but you couldn't really get comfortable.
You couldn't do anything about it.
No, you couldn't really do anything. Maybe you could sit down depending on your height, but you're not going to be comfortable.
I assure you, in current solitary confinement, you can sit down.
Oh yeah, I'm sitting down right now. So
I meant inside the other, in a correctional facility.
Oh, I thought you were making a joke. No, true. You can't sit down. It's not pleasant though.
So it starts day 1. They go in.
Yeah, totally.
3 guards. There's a total of 9 guards and 9 prisoners.
Yeah, and what they
3 guards per shift.
Yeah, and what they did is they would arrest the prisoners. So like once you got assigned, they would send someone to your house, a cop to your house. You would be arrested. You'd be taken to the local police station, booked. They would strip search you, delouse you. They didn't shave heads, but they put stocking caps on, and they take
stocking caps.
Yeah. So like, and it was like, so the thing is, what's really interesting to me about what they did when they were like booking everyone, because they fingerprinted them everything. What's interesting is that the way that Dr. Zimbardo talks about it versus like the way it happens in real life is so interesting because, okay, one reason why you would strip search and delouse someone to make sure they're not bringing any contraband in and to make sure there are no lice, correct?
Yes.
But the thing is, he looked at those as only mechanisms of dehumanization. And I see what he meant. Because when you bring someone in and you strip search them and delouse them, you're messing with that like that person's mind frame. Like you're already telling them.
I can tell you from actual experience that it's dehumanizing, and it's especially in the manner that it's done.
I can
You
imagine.
know, there's no dignity, there's no even sense of tolerance. It's rushed. It's this is run of the mill for me, you piece of shit. You know, you really feel terrible. So when that happens, even if you're in a good mood, that's immediately over.
And that's what he was looking at it as. Like, that's like that. It's to take that good mood away from you, let you know this is serious and you're not in control of the situation. I'm in control of the situation.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
that, from the get go, already kind of sets up what happens later on, how you look at people, because it is run of the mill. When you're looking at something as run of the mill, you're not having an interaction with the person, you're doing something. And so,
I felt like cattle.
and like, and it is dehumanizing. Like, that wasn't even a question for him. So I just thought that was interesting. And then they would take them. They drove around. They had them blindfolded, and I don't believe that that was a common occurrence in the 70s. Anyway, I think they were doing that just to disorient them more.
Yeah, that doesn't. I've never heard of that being normal ever. First we arrest them, then we blindfold them. See,
Confused.
we don't want them to know where the jail is.
That's what I think. I think because it was the Stanford psychology building, what they wanted to do was disorient them so that they
It
couldn't.
felt like they were actually going to a prison.
Yeah. And so,
I tell you what, no matter what the outside of that building looks like, you know what it's like once you get inside.
yes.
It
And
can be the prettiest thing outside.
well, the thing is, like, once they got inside, they got smocks with no underwear, and they had the stocking caps, and they got numbers, right? Which were further tools to dehumanize them, because the smock with the no underwear, like they said, that like changes how you physically hold your body, like how you carry yourself. And so you have
Brittany,
men.
all of this still happens today.
Well, yeah, because I was thinking about
LP7465 was
yeah,
my number. They give you a number like a piece of meat.
that's not good. I don't like that.
No, it's not. I completely agree.
I don't like that.
There's no
I don't like any of that.
there's no reform whatsoever.
Yeah,
It's not rehabilitative at all.
that's not how people think of it either, and that's the problem.
Oh yeah, it's storage. It's a large, dangerous timeout.
Yeah,
You know, cause
yeah,
and you rarely do you hurt the prisoner as much as you hurt the prisoner's family.
yeah.
If
That's
I'm
true.
being honest,
No, I believe that. Well, I
I'm
mean,
sorry. I'm very passionate about this.
no.
I hate to interrupt. They gave him a number.
Well, no, I was gonna say, just on what you were saying, I'll get to the family stuff too, because like I like again, I hadn't made these connections previously. I actually was close to someone who went to prison for a while, and the effect it has on the people who love you is immense.
Oh
It's
yeah, it
physically,
hurt.
financially,
Mhm.
mentally.
It hurt my family more than it ever hurt me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's yeah. I mean, I make mistakes. You pay
Yeah,
for them, you grow, and you learn.
yeah. It's just like this study is just so jarring, because the parts that aren't even weird are the like it's all very bizarre. Okay, so like they book them, they give them the smocks, and I was thinking about in Arizona when that Chief Arpaio, Sheriff
The pink
Arpaio,
shirts and
yeah,
the pink uniforms.
and he did
Yep.
it for the purpose of dehumanization.
Yeah,
So like
he's a real piece of shit.
yeah, and it's like he had him sleeping outside in the tents in the heat. He just treated them terribly.
I tell you what,
Like,
that was a wild place to go. I would never want to go there.
no, no.
That looked like absolutely miserable.
Well, and the thing is, it's like if you tell him that, he'll be like, "Well, that's the point." But the problem with that is that, like, yeah, obviously you don't want people to commit crimes, and you don't want anyone in prison, but you have to your humanity shouldn't allow you to treat someone the way you.
Prison doesn't teach us not to not do bad things. It teaches us to not get caught.
Yeah, and it teaches a lot of negative lessons, and there's a lot of things that need to change about that. And that's actually interesting, because that's kind of his conclusion at the end too, because like he's a website and a documentary, and
I'm a
his whole thing is
scientist.
like, we need to fix this.
I throw myself deep into my sociological experiments, though.
Yeah, that's fun. It's
No,
interesting.
it wasn't fun. I assure you.
Oh my goodness, I missed the joke. You were method acting. You were like, you got it.
Yeah, I was committed, literally.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Those are two good ones in a row.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so he gives them the smocks, and he says again that's a method of dehumanizing them. But like, again, like you can always find an argument for it in the sense of like, oh, efficiency, cost, benefit analysis, it's cheaper for this. So it's like it's interesting because like everything that we've accepted as one thing, it really is another thing, even if it's
Well,
not intentional. But
because you can take the humanity out of any argument,
mhm.
and people, I love the statement people use, oh, facts don't care about your feelings. I get it, but your facts don't take into account human elements.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah,
facts.
it's cost efficient, but at what price to that man's mental capacity?
And ultimately, that question is what stopped the experiment.
I'm telling you, Brittany, I'm a scientist.
No, but you're right. But like the thing is, there were 50 or so other people who came and viewed the experiment, and only one person said, "Hey, is this moral?" And that's what stopped the experiment. So
Thank
they
God
want,
that person came along.
well, good, yeah, it is because like who knows what would have happened? Because okay, so they've been booked, they've gotten their numbers, they're not allowed to refer to themselves or anyone else outside of using their numbers. So if your number is like 1515, like that's how you respond. So
Yep, I understand.
yeah, and that's what they did. And so on the prison guard side, like they've already done all this setup for the prisoners. On the prison guard side, they give them no training, and they tell them, "Hey, your
It's about right.
is to maintain law and order in the facility." And they say, can't hit them, but you can get creative. They have a warden who's who's not even a graduate student, excuse me, an undergraduate student. They have a consultant who's a guy who spent 17 years in prison.
Oh,
Have Yeah, like they went deep into this. They
so
have
I mean, they sounded legit already,
oh yeah, but they have a
but that adds more authenticity.
well no it's it's like it's just like it's so clear like they all of them once this was over they were like we basically couldn't tell the difference between the role they were playing and who they were as a person. People couldn't even like really think of themselves as who they were before they came to prison after 6 days.
That can explain part of the Blue Lives Matter movement.
Oh yeah, and that's
People
what
can't separate themselves.
well
Your
which is
profession is not your identity.
that well the thing is that that's true. Your profession isn't your identity, and when you're given this like unbridled, this unchecked power kind of, and you're given very vague commands like they were told to maintain law and order, and so they got real creative with that. They came up with punishments, all kinds of stuff. So okay, so we're in day one, right?
Hold
One
on, hold on. Can we get a few examples of some of these unique punishments?
So the biggest one was like doing push-ups, jumping jacks. Later on it devolved into can you hold on for 1 second? I'm sorry.
Yes, I can. Hey, folks, we're having some technical difficulties here. That happens apparently,
Okay.
and we're back.
You're back. We're back.
Okay.
Oh, but the one of the worst ones was they would make them clean out the toilets with their bare hands multiple times.
Oh, that is awful.
They would make them chant and say all kinds of stuff. Like
That cleaning out the toilet makes me cringe.
it's disgusting. Like even if it's like a pretty clean toilet, like it's disgusting. Oh, they would like. So I don't want to ruin this because okay, so we get into day one. Things are pretty fine. They're getting used to calling out their numbers. The prison guards and the prisoners are both getting used to kind of being in the simulation, right?
Okay.
One thing that they were told to do was to have counts. And so what they would do is they would have people come out and they would count like say like do a head count essentially, but have them say their number. And they would tell them to do it, I guess like with every shift change. So one of the times obviously would be like
That's the same as modern day. Go ahead.
and like that the the reason why they told them is because it's a way for them to have a direct confrontation with them, and it's also a way to control the situation. You're asleep. I'm calling you out of bed at 2:30 a.m. Come on, get out.
Oh
Like that.
yeah, people do a standing count.
Yeah,
A lot of times there's arguments, punishments, well, all that nonsense, just because
exactly.
they want to be a dickhead.
And like that's the thing, and it's just amazing because it the reason why like it's done is for a head count, but the reason why he was doing it was to assert control and dominance. And so eventually these counts turned into like hour-long ordeals because things just did not go well. Like first day, pretty fine. Second morning, they had a prison revolt. They put their mattresses against the
On the
bed.
second morning, they had a prison revolt.
Morning. Yes.
Why did they revolt already?
They didn't like how they were being treated because I think they had already started with making some of them do push-ups. And like, one thing I didn't mention is the prison guards, they wore like a uniform and they wore sunglasses that had a mirror. So like a mirrored lenses so that you couldn't make eye contact with them. Another thing to note is that there was no actual difference between the sizes in the men as far as like who's picked to be a prison guard and who's picked to be a prisoner. It was a flip of a coin.
Okay.
But prisoners perceived them as bigger than them. When they would go to the bathroom, they would be blindfolded and led down the hallway. Again, I think to further disorient them and put them more into the situation so that they didn't recognize the building.
Yeah, you always want someone to be uncomfortable in that situation.
And like that's what they were doing. So the second morning, there is a prison revolt, and they refuse to come out of their rooms.
That was quick. That was immediate.
I'm like, what happened overnight? I think it was that count. I don't know. But
Day 2 of jail, I'm still sleeping.
Day two. This is what I'm trying to say. Day 2. So what do you think the prison guards do? What do you think the 3 prison guards on duty do?
I don't know. Did they like not give them their meals? I don't know.
First thing they did was call in reinforcements.
What do you mean? They can't beat them, so what are reinforcements for?
Exactly. They called in, so I told you they do shifts. So there were 3 on duty. Some stayed over from the night shift. And then they called in some of the alternates.
Good Lord.
Yes.
How many police or guards are there?
There were 9. They got 9. They had all of the guards.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and so they call in reinforcements. They're able to quell it, but like essentially what they do is they take everything. They take their beds. They take their clothes. They take all their clothes. They don't let them brush their teeth. They don't let them do anything. And like they do. Oh, the other.
So they're just naked.
They got a fire hydrant. The fire hydrant was there, not even a part of the experiment. It was there for their own protection. They immediately started spraying them with the fire hydrant to get them to come out.
Oh, my.
Then they took their clothes and they took everything, right?
And they were just sitting there in their cells naked.
Yeah, they were outside naked, yeah. And so,
oh, my.
But the thing that they did is like, they're like, okay, there are 9 of us here right now, and there are 9 prisoners. We can't have 9 people here all the time. So they went to psychological tactics to, start.
And they created these on their own. They didn't have tips.
Now, one of the people who obviously the doctors were involved, and Dr. Zimbardo, he was like the superintendent, but they were all pretty hands off for the most part in the beginning. And so like he said that they on their own came up with the psychological warfare tactics. And what they did is there are 3 cells because there are 3 prisoners in a cell, right? And so they set up a privilege cell. And what they did is they put the beds back in that cell. They picked 3 people, and they were like, okay, you can have your clothes back. You're allowed to brush your teeth. You can eat, and you can go to the bathroom.
That immediately divided the prisoners.
It did, and that's not even a privilege. Like, those are the basic things that they already had. But they did that. And so what they did is that after a certain point in time, like some of the privileged prisoners decided they weren't going to take their meals. So they switched them up. So now you have other people coming in and getting the privileges. You take all that stuff back from them. And
when you say privileges, again, we just want to stress that these are basic human necessities.
And what they already had. So it's like nothing on top. Like they're literally getting nothing.
They were getting what they already had back.
And that's a privilege.
That's insane.
And brushing your teeth is a privilege. One of the things that they did against one of the guys who was a ringleader, they wanted information. And so they were like, if you give us information, then we'll, like, that was the tactic they went after, like the informant tactic. And so when the other prisoners got sent back and these prisoners got brought in, people thought somebody snitched. And so they didn't trust anyone anymore. Like, nobody trusted anyone. And
that's how a lot of things start, too, is just with a rumor.
A rumor.
Just with a thought with no backing information.
Nothing. And so, like, the thing is, like, it seems like prisoner, I think it was 8612. I think he started that particular revolt. But the problem was, so they put them in, they did the privilege thing and they got everyone all disoriented, not trusting each other. But then they started looking for information. And like, so they had prisoner 8612. I think they put him in solitary
Now,
confinement.
now my question is, looking for information. This is day 2 still?
But my question is, what for what? How can you? What are you an informant for? You're not
Yeah,
even
it's
a
it's the
target.
second day. You know what happened. They're just brand new to this. What do you want to know?
But people took it.
What information were they given?
They did. Well, what I mean is like people are like, yeah, I'll be an informant.
Ah,
But like
of
no,
course, of course.
of course. But to get their privileges back. So eventually they were able to. Everyone got their stuff back, and so there was that prison revolt, and then after that, the prison guards just really ramped it up with like the harassment, like the way they treated the prisoners. They
The
were really
dehumanization,
push-ups, huh?
the dehumanization.
The dehumanization, but like just the random push-ups, the jumping jacks, that kind of stuff. And so they decided they were going to have a visitor stay. But before the visitor stay, prisoner 8612 has like an emotional disturbance. Like
What day are we at right
we're
here?
at day like 2.5, 3.
So day 3, prisoner.
No, we're not even at day 3. I'm sorry, I take that back. Why I say that is because he didn't last 36 hours.
So day 2, he had a psychological break.
This guy had a psychological break, starts
What happened?
yelling, freaking out. He's just freaking out. He's like, I don't want to be here. And just freaking, well, not, he doesn't even say, I don't want to be here, but he's like, we can't leave. And like, upset. And like, it's so bad. The psych, I don't even know what the words you would use for it, but like, they're so deep into this experiment that the doctor who's conducting the experiment is like, he's faking it. He's faking it to get released from a
What do you mean?
experiment. I'm serious.
Wow.
2 days.
Now, was there some type of contract, or could they opt out?
Yes. They had an informed consent agreement. So before they even got to the position where they were arrested, they had to sign informed consent saying, okay, these are some things that might happen, like, but you're okay with it. Just saying, like, these are some tactics. Like, they knew it wasn't going to be
Like a waiver.
like a waiver. So, like, these people signed up for it. They could leave at any time. That's the biggest thing. They could leave at any time.
So all this guy bugging out had to do was say, "Let me go."
But the thing is, part of it is like when he was like freaking out, like they were like, you're faking it, and like didn't want to let him leave. But eventually they had to let him leave because like it's not prison. It's
I don't understand what he was faking either. If he was miserable, is he faking that he hates it here?
because like if he's faking it, then he really does hate it here and wants you to send him home.
Yeah, that's insane. Okay, he didn't last 36 hours, huh?
So he gets out, he gets released after 36 hours. We're not even fully in day 2 yet. And so he gets released. And then they have visitation day, right?
This is day 3?
Day 3, they have visitation day. And on visitation day, like they're going to be bringing the families in. And at this point, things have devolved in this situation. Once 8612 started telling everybody, you can't leave, everybody started freaking out. They had to restore order in the prison. So one of the privileges that got taken was using the restroom. So they wouldn't let the prisoners like use the restroom at night.
So they were just going in the cell?
They had to go in a bucket in the cell, and they wouldn't let them dump it out until the morning. So like at this time, these guys are sleep deprived. They're upset. They're miserable. Really.
Are they eating?
Huh?
Are they eating?
They might have resumed eating at this point because they did take away that privilege for a while. But they should have. If
Oh,
they
that's rough.
that night, they ate the next day. Exactly. Like it's
And
crazy.
you can't legally take away their food. Like even if you give them one glob of, all this mixture of bullshit, you still got to feed them something.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Me too.
So visiting day. Well, I can only imagine the fiasco that happens.
No, but the thing is, so it's visiting day, and they're like even the doctor's like, we cannot let visitors in like this. So what they do is they hire a cheerleader, like a former cheerleader, to sit as a receptionist at the front desk. She's cute, whatever. They hire her to sit at the front desk. They play music over the intercom. They like clean everything up, and they start by having, and this is where it's interesting because the families are not a part of the experiment, but it affected them.
So the families really think they're in trouble?
No, the families. I think that it seems like the families knew that the families knew that they were a part of the experiment, like 100% knew. Because the
Okay,
reason
okay.
why they did so much stuff to clean up the building was because they didn't want parents and significant others coming and be like, "Babe, you gotta leave." Like they
Okay.
that to
Okay. So
happen.
they were aware of the experiment. Okay.
They knew it was an experiment, and like that. What I mean by they weren't a part of it, they weren't in that basement with them. Like they don't like it's been 2 days, so like there's no reason why they should kind of buy into the stuff they buy into.
Yeah, they shouldn't be like out of their minds.
But so the families come to visit, and they make them wait for like half an hour before they're allowed to see their person. They have to discuss the case, and there are only 2 visitors allowed in the waiting room at one time, and there's a guard present the whole time. All of that, except for maybe the discussion of the case, is pretty standard. But it was all very arbitrary too, and it's highlighted by the fact that these guys aren't in prison. They don't have a case to discuss.
Yeah.
Families point that out, but they still do it. They still do it. So they get in the room, right? They get in the visitation room, and they have a visit with their son. And what Dr. Zimbardo did is anything that they would say that might be negative about their son's appearance or how they look, in the sense of like, you look tired or is something wrong, they would, the guard in there would throw that blame back on the child or like or on the prisoner instead of
Okay.
saying, oh yeah. So it'd be like, oh, you don't look so good. And it's like, what, your son doesn't sleep well? Or, oh, you look
Ah, okay. He was
and it's like,
deflecting
okay.
it.
Yeah, like they would deflect, and they're like, oh, so you don't think your son's like macho enough to be here? Like you don't think he can handle it? And they're like, no, my boy can take it.
So have you eaten? What are you calling him skinny?
Yeah, like
Okay.
crazy. And so the
And
family,
the family would just get defensive and be like, "Oh no, 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 no."
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And the thing about it is that the families would rather work within the system to appeal things. So they talk to the guard and be like, hey, can you just make sure he's doing all right? Instead of saying, hey, kid, get out of this.
Yeah.
Which
They
is
started to buy into it too, then it seems.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, they are not a part of this experiment, but they bought into it completely. They did everything it took to see their loved one, and they're doing
Yeah.
everything it takes to keep them safe in this experiment, even though they could easily just say, hey, look, I don't like the way you look right now. I'm kind of concerned about what I'm seeing. I think you should leave. They didn't say that. They would say,
These are some awfully supporting folks. Well, he looks like he's dying, but that's his dream, so we're not going to take it from him.
my boy can take it.
He's a man.
He's a man.
He's a guard.
Man.
He's a guard material boy right there. Okay, so visitor day 3.
So visitor.
How? Go ahead.
Now, something I hadn't told you yet. After 8612 left, a rumor started. And the rumor was that 8612 was going to come back with his friends and bust them all out.
Out of the experiment.
Now,
He's going to bust us out of the joint.
but the thing is, this is where it gets completely insane. Because Dr. Zimbardo himself even admits, he says, if we were thinking as like scientists, what we would have done is trace where the rumor came from and saw how it spread throughout. What he did was call a meeting with the warden, I think the prison consultant, the superintendent, and the warden, again, is just an undergraduate student. So the warden, the prison consultant, the 17 years in prison guy, the superintendent, who was himself, and they were like, what are we going to do? We can't have somebody breaking into our facility. So
they took this rumor serious.
Yes.
Okay.
The first thing they do is Dr. Zimbardo calls the Palo Alto Police Department and says, hey, I know you have an old jail. Can I send some of my prisoners there?
Oh my, it sounds like it's about to get a little worse.
He says, no, you don't have insurance to transport prisoners. I don't know if he says also this is an experiment, but if he doesn't, maybe he's like, I guess I have to play along. So he gets mad, not as a scientist, but as a prison guard who's like, these prison facilities don't cooperate with each other.
The brotherhood ain't what it used to be.
The brotherhood with the basement of the Stanford psychology building. And
my prison is just as good as your prison, goddammit.
He just wanted to send some people to the prison because what he wanted to do was hide them so if 8612 and his buddies came back, they wouldn't find him.
Oh, that's so absurd.
It's absurd. So this is the second plan. They're like, this is what we're gonna do.
These prisoners or the doctor's plan?
The doctor, all of them.
Okay.
Like the superintendent is the doctor. He
No,
gave
I'm saying this is their second plan, or this is the prisoner's second plan.
this is the prison guards like meeting.
Okay.
What they do is they're like, okay, we're gonna dismantle the entire prison and take all the prisoners upstairs to the 5th floor after the visitors leave. So what they do, again, they take everything down. They they put bags over the prisoner head and they chain them together and take them upstairs and hide them in the 5th floor. Okay?
With bags over their heads.
Dr. Zimbardo sits downstairs waiting, and his idea is like, 8612 comes back. This is what I'm telling him. I'm like, why are you here? There's no one to bust out. The experiment ended. That's his plan. Even though, if you think about that plan, if 8612 and his buddies came back, why are you sitting here in the dark, Dr. Zimbardo? And there are pictures of this.
He sounds like a supervillain.
He's sitting there like this. And I'm like, what is your plan?
He had his back turned. He was waiting for the turnaround, the reveal.
He was waiting. He literally waited for them, and the guys never came. But
what's the number of the prisoner?
8612.
8612. You're late.
You're late.
We've already practiced what we wanted.
Yeah, it's done. It's done. Couldn't save them.
They're all dead.
This is the crazy thing. So he's sitting down there, right? One of his old buddies, like a colleague of his from Yale, his graduate school roommate and colleague comes down and he's like, "Oh, I heard what you were doing and I wanted to see it." And he was like, "So where's the independent variable?" Right? Asking a very reasonable, scientific question about an experiment. Homeboy gets furious.
Yeah.
Furious. Like what he said, he's like, I got so mad. He's like, I'm sitting here worried about the safety and security of my prison facility, having to stress out about 8612 and his buddies coming back, and this guy's coming to ask me. And I'm thinking, like, yes? What?
Yeah.
Why is he so mad?
Usually, scientists are very reasonable, as far as logic and things, and he went off the rails too.
Yes, but it's worse. Because he said, I actually was considering if 8612 did come back, figuring out a way to re-imprison him because he left on false pretenses.
Wow. He sounds more and more like a supervillain.
For no reason. And this is you're talking about, again, a voluntary experiment. But what you're really talking about is a rumor that never materialized. Now you're wondering, okay, so there was no actual... and the thing is, it doesn't even seem like all 9 of them knew. It seems like 1 or 2 were talking about it.
So they were just talking amongst each other.
Yeah.
Delirious. We all say things we don't mean when we leave prison. Yeah, I'll call you. I'll see you on the other side is one of the biggest lies I've ever told.
Oh my goodness, that's the lies that you told. Also, you're like, bye.
Boom. There's some of them that they should be out now. I imagine they know. I'm sure they've said the same thing. When you leave, you just, yeah, okay, bye, whatever. I'll call you. We're out of here.
You're out.
It's over now. I'm free. I got shit to do.
That's fair. And you know what else? Again, that guy shouldn't have had anything to do because he blocked off 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, he blocked out 2 weeks. Afterwards, I think after 8761?
8612.
8612. I think after 8612 got out and returned to society, I'm sure he was like, what the hell was wrong with me? Even if he said he was going to break back in, he was like, I'm not going to do that. Like he came to his senses, I would assume.
I mean, yeah, you would think that. Also, it's this, you can leave. But
yeah.
After he told everyone, because I told you, he went on a break and he was telling everyone you can't leave, they won't let you leave. And so that actually affected how the prisoners felt. And they talked to them and some of them reported very intense feelings of hopelessness.
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting because it also brings into question other experiments, right? Where there's this one experiment with dogs and they put a dog in a box or in a cage, and the dog tries to get out by jumping up and down, keeps trying to get out of the cage, and they're obviously not able to because there's a lid. Eventually, they remove the lid, and the dog doesn't even try anymore. And so it's
That's
just like,
fascinating.
did they get to the point where they were just kind of broken? And it kind of seems like they did.
They broke quick too.
They very quickly, and it was the dehumanization. It was the anonymity on the prison guard side of having these, essentially, we can't make eye contact. I can't see you. And the way you're treating me is gruff. You're not calling me by my name. I have to call you Mr. Corrections Officer. Like, they had them chanting this stuff.
So we're on day 4, and they're upstairs on level 5, locked away with bags on their heads.
Yeah, so they've been brought back down on day 4, and the prison's been put back together. But do you think that they're going to be, like, happy that the threat never materialized? Because if you did, that was not the right thought. They were furious. Their whole perspective, the prison guards were like, somebody has to pay. The doctor was like,
Somebody has to pay.
Yes.
Wow.
Things got crazy. Like, that's when they had them, doing the whole cleaning the toilet bowls out with their bare hands, the hour-long counts. They were making them do the push-ups, the jumping jacks. They just were treating them terribly, like, absolutely terribly. And so we're at, like, day 4. They bring in another prisoner because I told you there were 24 people selected.
Oh, so they brought in an alternate prisoner.
And they were like, I wonder how this new guy is going to do. So one stark difference is that they've been in there for 4 days and they've seen this whole thing go down. This guy has no idea of what's happening. So he goes through everything. He gets there immediately horrified. He does not adjust well, and they put him in solitary confinement. While he's in solitary confinement, the prison guards try pitting them against each other again, and they're like, hey, if you want us to let him out of solitary confinement, you can give us your blankets for the night, and we'll let him out. Nobody gives
Wow. You said nobody gives up a blanket.
No.
Why would they? They don't know that guy.
They don't know that guy. But the other thing is, like, so the guys in solitary confinement, they kept him in there for 3 hours, even though, and it seems like their internal agreement as prison guards, they had agreed that nobody could stay in solitary confinement for longer than 1 hour.
I could do 3 hours of solitary on the damn toilet.
Well, no. Well, I guess that makes sense, Johnny.
You do not know the full depth of my reality, and it's striking. It's funny. It's funny to see you actually speechless because you didn't know how to respond.
I didn't know how to respond, Johnny.
So with that, this guy's in there for a brutal 3 hours.
3 hours, right? 3 long, hard hours. No, I'm kidding. But no, he's in there for a long time. He's already terrified. And so the scientists pull him out. And at this point, they're just messing with everybody. One guy, so we're on day 4. What happens on day 4? They bring in a priest, okay?
They bring in a priest.
Who used to be a chaplain at a prison.
Okay.
So this priest comes in, and it's interesting to me because it seems like they kind of clued him in and wanted him to act the role of a chaplain. So he comes in, he starts talking to these guys, and he's like, okay, like, so how you doing? Talking to them. They're all, like, pretty upset. But the question that he asked them that really is, this is amazing. He's like, so what are you trying to do to get out of here, son? And they're like, what do you mean? And he's like, you need a lawyer to get out of here. So, like, what are you going to do? And so he talks to them, and he's like, I'll call your family and tell them to get you a lawyer, right?
So does this priest know it's an experiment?
Yes.
Okay, so he's just feeding them lines of horse shit then.
And that's the part that I was just like, this is weird. I think they told him, just do what you normally do. That's what I think. So this priest actually calls their families and says, like, hey, you need to get a lawyer to get your son out. The families call Dr. Zimbardo.
Okay.
Like, hey, what do I do? They're not like, hey, we don't need a lawyer because he's not in jail. They're like, hey, what do I need to do? Which is crazy.
What steps do I need to get my boy paroled from this experiment?
You're using that as a joke? That's exactly what they said.
That's great.
Okay. So let's move to day 5.
Okay.
They have parole hearings.
Oh my word.
At the parole hearings, what
So
is
they forgot it was 14 days. Scheduled for 14 days, I'll say.
Let me tell you how ridiculous this one is. They have
Oh
parole
my.
hearings with the parole board, right? Oh, and when another one of the guys has a mental break, the prison consultant who was in prison for 17 years literally is like, you can't, he's like, white boy, you can't handle this. Out
That
of
seems
nowhere.
about the appropriate response.
Like, literally out of nowhere. He's like doing that. And so the guy's like, okay, I can do it, and stays. When the
I've seen that in person.
I can believe that because, like,
You better calm down, young, and you ain't built for the hole.
and it's just like chill. But like, the thing is, it's just so mind blowing to me because it's not real, and they know it's not real. They signed waivers. They know they didn't commit a crime, and they weren't really like
The
in
first thing
jail.
that popped into my mind is when the priest said, "What are you doing to get home?" I would have told him waiting about 11 more days.
That's really what you would think, you right? Like that makes sense.
So tell me about these parole hearings.
Wait, before we get to the pro hearings, I love
Okay.
the other guy who had a break. He won't come out of his room to talk to the priest. And so Dr. Zimbardo is able to get him to come out. He's saying his stomach doesn't feel well. And
His God
he's
has forsaken him.
huh?
His God has forsaken him.
Like he's feeling dark. This man is feeling hopeless.
Oh my.
What? I don't know. Like I don't understand it. So he's feeling hopeless. And so Dr. Zimbardo's like, okay, here, just come talk to the priest. I'll take you to the doctor afterwards. Guy breaks down. Completely breaks down. Dr. Zimbardo, it seems like at this point is like, okay, maybe we've gone too far. And it's like, okay, I'll get you some
Maybe.
food.
Huh.
Yeah. He's like, maybe. I'll get you some food. We'll take you to the doctor. He leaves them alone for a few minutes. Prison guards have lined up the other prisoners and are making them chant. Prisoner, I cannot remember his number, but prisoner, so like, let's say it's 1014.
1111 1014. Prisoners
Yeah.
1014.
Did a bad thing, and that's why my cell's a mess. They're chanting this a dozen times, like he's a bad prisoner, and that's why their cells are a mess. And so, like, Dr. Zimbardo hears it, realizes it's not like the first day they were doing chanting with like Mr. Correctional Officer. He kind of saw it as like lighthearted in the sense of they were all getting into their roles. Today, he sees it as conformity, and he's
Okay.
like, "Whoa, this has gone too far." And he realizes that prisoner 1014 can hear him. Like can hear them chanting, and he goes over there and he's like, "Oh my goodness, like I'm so sorry." And the guy's like, he's like, "No, like I can't leave because like I have to prove to them like I can handle this. Like I'm not like they think I'm a bad prisoner. I'm not a bad prisoner." And
Wow, these guys got sucked in so deep, so fast.
so
And I don't like the weird mentality of having to prove something. You still see that today, but I feel like it was much more prevalent in the 70s.
I can believe that. I can definitely believe that, especially because like it seems like there was so much machismo going on anyway.
The whole culture of be a man.
Yeah, the whole that, and then the fact that they have already done so much to emasculate them. The fact that they're wearing essentially dresses with no undergarments in the 70s. You know, at times they take their clothes. They when they're doing push-ups, they put their foot on top of them or make other prisoners sit on. Like they've already gone through so much emasculation. I think that's why they felt they had something to prove.
Okay.
So he's feeling, and so Dr. Zimbardo's like, it's just an experiment. Like you don't have to stay. You can leave. And at this point, it kind of seems like it clears up for this guy. And he's like, okay, all right, let's go. And he takes him to the doctor and everything. So now
And he leaves. That guy leaves.
he leaves. Yeah, he leaves because they lost too. And so I believe he leaves. Yes. And so we get to the parole hearings. So they have a parole board. One of the people is the prison consultant. And then there's like other scientists that they brought in for these parole hearings to help conduct them. And what the parole is, you can leave the experiment early, but you have to forfeit your pay. And you have to make No, but you have to. No, you're saying, oh, that's not the right time. Let me tell you why. Because they all want to leave. They're all like, okay. So they put it to the consideration of the parole board.
This is so absurd.
To get a deal they already have in writing. Because you can leave the experiment at any time with no pay or with the pay for the days you got. Like, so they put that consideration before the parole board. At this point, the parole board denies parole.
For everybody.
They flip out. They're like just distraught. And this is like day 5 going into like day 6. Things are not going well in the prison. And what ultimately ends the experiment is, so I told you, there's one scientist who comes in, sees what's going on, and she's like, the way you're treating these boys is disgusting. Like, have you thought about the morality in this? Now, out of 50 people from the outside, many of which are Stanford educated, Yale educated scientists, social scientists, psychologists, she's the only one who said anything about morality and right and wrong.
That's what I think this country needs a little bit more, is morality.
And just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it.
That is the absolute truth.
And like, that's really what it seems like she brought to it. And the biggest takeaway is, and well, another thing is, he said they experimented for a couple of reasons. And one of the reasons is because at nighttime, when the guards thought that the scientists weren't watching anymore, but the cameras were still rolling, they were doing things that got to a sadistic and pornographic nature that they had to pull the plug. So they were like humiliating these men in a lot of different ways. They weren't hitting them, but they were humiliating them.
See, that brings the questions of, like, at our nature, are humans really bad natured? And the only reason society works is because we're watching each other?
No.
I don't believe necessarily in a police state, but the more cameras there are all over the place, I think the more people realize they're being observed, and when you're observed, you act differently.
And that's actually the theory behind this idea of panopticon or panopticism. Essentially, when you're being watched, you conform your behavior on your own. So just existing in a society where there are laws and people who will enforce those laws in one way or another, and people who are watching in surveillance cameras, like, you conform your behavior on your own. You don't need someone to, come on and hit you to get you to do what you think and believe is the right thing to do. So I don't
What
know.
conclusions did the doctor come up with?
The conclusions he came up with is essentially is that with the right circumstances, anyone could evolve into this nature.
Now, was there any, this happened in the 70s, you say, was there any long-term studies afterwards? Did they ever get back with any of the people in the experiment and see how their lives were post?
I didn't find anything about that, and maybe I wasn't looking in the right places, but I mean, it doesn't seem like there were long-term studies, but there were long-term conversations.
Okay.
So, for instance, one thing is, one of the criticisms of the study, other than the fact that it is unethical, other than the fact that the doctor definitely got way too ingrained in his position, and that there wasn't really an independent variable or control. One of the
So you're saying, aside from the whole thing being a shit show from top to bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aside from that, one of the criticisms that is the most prevalent is this idea that they kind of did a demand on the prison guards. They essentially told them what they wanted to see, and the guards performed at that level. So they came into a position that is heavily stereotyped, like prison guard, heavily stereotyped position. There's an idea of how you're supposed to behave in that situation. They came in, were like, maintain law and order. They gave them that uniform, the glasses, the billy club, all that stuff.
They turned into Cartman, respect my authority.
Yeah, and like, that's really what a lot of people argue was the issue with the experiment. And I mean, look, I'm not going to say I'm a sociological or social psychology expert, but what I am going to say is I still think that that's beneficial, though, because like, you're learning that when you give somebody vague commands with little training in a stereotype position and they have an idea of what you expect, they perform to that level. But that happens every day.
And now I feel like that experiment was worthless because the information gained was never applied, it seems like, because you still throw police officers with very little training into the streets. You hire prison guards. You give them very little training into the streets. Now, don't get me wrong, the Army has a decent amount of training, but for what they're doing, might not be enough just throwing people out there. And obviously, once we throw them out there, we're not giving them the supervision they need to conduct their job properly.
Well, the thing I will say though is because like I know, so obviously I'm biased. My dad was in the Navy, but one thing I do know is like when it comes to the military training seems like is much more extensive and much
Oh, I
more
agree with that.
ongoing than. And the thing is, the other thing is, so kind of brings to mind. There's an example of an officer who was in West Virginia. He responded to a domestic call. There was a guy in the house with a gun. They get in the house. He's talking to this guy. He's looking at this dude, and this guy does have a shotgun. But he says, based on my training, I believe as a Marine, I didn't think him to be a threat to me or to my other officers. So he didn't shoot him. He kept trying to reason with him and talk to him. He said, I honestly didn't think he was going to hurt us. This guy was just having a mental breakdown. Eventually, another officer arrives on scene and does shoot him. And there wasn't, much in the sense of like he was waving a firearm at officers. Yeah. And he continuously said he was going to shoot him. When they got that shotgun, though, there were no bullets in it.
John Q.
He was on cue, but that's not where that story ends. That officer gets fired by his department for not shooting him.
See, that's a shame because that's good police work.
And, that's the thing. So,
with no bullets in that gun, that guy obviously wanted to get shot, if not die.
And that's what it was. He was like, I think this is a suicide attempt. And it was. Based on everything that's been presented about that case, it was. And he didn't get his job back. And the thing is,
that's a shame. He's one of the police that deserve a job.
And that's happened other times too, not just there. The problem is when you have, I like to use the example of Ferguson, Missouri, their police department. There was the neighboring police department. There was a Department of Justice report done right after, a while after the killing of Mike Brown into that police department. There was a very negative culture persistent in that department to the point where the Department of Justice literally said that they were violating the 14th Amendment and violating equal protection under the law because they disproportionately targeted Black people, and they were vocal in that. And it was insane. It was insane how much more they targeted.
And yet people still refuse to believe that's an issue.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger problem in itself.
But when you have a police, because that police chief, he would be like, go to make today a Black day. And they understood that as arrest Black people. But then you have other people and it's not just, and I don't want it to seem like I'm saying this is only persistent in policing. It's not. It's everywhere. The fire department said he would rather, there's a fire chief who said he would rather save a dog than a Black person.
That's awful.
You had a prosecutor recently who said it was a shame that the guy, I think she was saying it was a shame that the police chief who said that more Black people should have died from COVID. It might not have been the police chief. I think it was the Navy. It was a guy in the Navy, very high up in the Navy. He said it's a shame that more Black people didn't die from COVID. And
from COVID?
From the ongoing corona. But then she was like, he shouldn't have lost his job for that. It was somebody. It was either a police chief or a guy in the Navy, but both people got in trouble. But she said it's a shame that he lost his job for saying that because it's true. So it's just, and it's not just in the criminal justice, this is everywhere. Right now we're in the
It's been ingrained in so many people. It's generational.
It's generational. And we have to acknowledge that because when you combine the findings of that study with the history of racism in particular, I'm not going to say, again, they're different issues, but a lot of them do have to do with race. The history of racism in the country where we did look at Black people as less than people. We literally said that they were not a whole person.
What was it, 3/5?
Yeah. And the reason why they said that was because for voting. So that you could have property. You could count Black people as property and would help white people out, very rich landowners.
Yeah.
We just didn't see Black people as people, and we found so many ways to dehumanize and degrade them. And so when you combine that with this stereotyped idea of what people expect.
On top of that too, we have I think I want to blame partially on poor education systems because I feel like the less intelligent a person is, or the more likely they are. Not necessarily they are to be racist, but I feel like more racists have a lower IQ because I just can't fathom how an intelligent person would believe the color of my skin makes me better than the color of the skin.
I don't. But the thing is, there are people who you consider to be intelligent. Part of the problem, I do agree with you on the education. But the other thing about that is like, you actually have to like really try to look up the education yourself in order to see that that's not true. And the reason why I say that is because you look in a lot of history books, they really gloss over slavery, civil rights, anything.
Incredibly.
And the way they talk about them is so interesting. I found one recently, and it said that the KKK was formed basically in response to carpetbaggers from northern states in corrupt government coming down, and they were sometimes racist and sometimes violent.
When they want to control their narrative, and those guys are pieces of shit, and I'll go on record saying that. I don't care. You're a piece of shit.
And sometimes violent.
Yeah, sometimes racist my ass, sometimes violent my ass. It's actually cowards.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like that wasn't a history book.
No, not at all. I didn't know nearly as much as I know now about any type of, I hesitate to say Black history.
Yeah, I know.
It is Black history, but I feel like it's also part of American history.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? There's so like we knew about Martin Luther King and we knew a little bit about Malcolm X, and we learned that every February, and that was it.
That was it.
And we didn't know about Malcolm X for real.
No.
We got a peaceful Muslim dude.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know his thoughts in the beginning because we weren't taught any of that. Slavery, when I was taught about slavery in, elementary or middle school or whatever it was very watered down.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all the depictions, even if they would have a picture, were very safe pictures. You never got to see something of true terror, and you never got to explain, how bad it was. It's just like, look at this picture that happened a long time ago.
Yeah. Yes. And that's how it's looked at. And it's not that long ago. Like
It's not.
Aren't that long ago. Like a lot of things. Like Black people got the right to vote in 1964, but not really. And like that's not even that. My dad was born in 1965.
That's a shame.
My dad's young. But like that's the thing. Like when you're talking about all these things that are ingrained in one thing, and it's just, and I think the reason why I do think that the Stanford prison experiment in particular is so useful is because you have a group of people who committed no crime.
Yeah.
We're in an experiment. I don't think it's just useful at the display of power. I think it's useful at looking at how degradation and dehumanization can affect deeply people who should know better. This guy said he dissociated so far that he didn't even recognize himself as himself. He saw such a big gap between who he was on the outside and who he was on the inside in less than 6 days.
That's crazy.
He didn't really see himself as that person anymore.
Imagine what 20 years can do to you.
Especially when you're talking about long stints in solitary confinement, which has been shown before to cause close to psychosis.
Oh, it's damaging. It's not beneficial at all. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't fix anything. It's just pure torture.
It's a punishment. Like that's all it is.
Well, I tell you what, Brittany, Alexis, thank you for coming in and talking with us. You have anything coming up you want to promote?
Oh no.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, where can the people find you?
Oh, find me on Instagram at bfelds, BFELDZ, and on Facebook that way too. It's my comedy.
Do you have a business page on Facebook?
It's the comedy page, Brittany Alexis Comedy, but it's under the same username. So if you search at bfelds on Instagram or Facebook, you'll find me.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much. Thank you all for tuning in. I've been your host. Again, you can check me out at facebook.com/tunicanjohn or facebook.com/inquisitiveminds. I'm also on Instagram at pandasmith827, and join us next week. Thank you very much.